What's going on, everybody? This is the Bug Disc Golf here with a quick review of the new Discmania C-Line FD3 and their new Swedish Italian blend plastic. Let's start off talking about the feel of this new plastic. Now, I live in Louisiana, so it gets pretty hot, and I definitely think depending on where you live, different plastics will feel different, obviously in the cold or hot humidity. But for me, which is about 95 degrees and pretty humid, this plastic is really good. In my opinion, I think that they've kind of changed their C-Line plastic up a little bit over the course of since they started manufacturing. For instance, this MD3 that I have, very first disc I believe that they produced in this new plastic, I would say that it's a little slicker. Obviously, any of these kind of see-through C-Line, whatever you want to call it, plastics and premium plastics are probably a little bit more slick than obviously like your D-Line or whatever base plastic. And not saying that this plastic is bad in the MD3, but I would say that they've started to perfect it a little bit better. And I would say it's maybe a little bit more reliable as far as feel, because it's not as slick. For instance, DD3, basically same feel as the FD. Plastic-wise, feels about the same. And again, back to the MD3, a little bit slicker. So I would say that the plastic, I can't say enough about the plastic. I have a lot of Innova discs, have a couple dynamic discs, and I would say that this is the best looking and feeling plastic that I have in my bag. Now, just a little profile view. Board flat, just totally flat. Shallow, not deep. I like it. I like shallow forehand discs especially. Shallow backhand's cool with me. Just this disc has probably been, I've only had it about a week, probably my most used disc since I've been playing in that week. Just very reliable, dead straight with a consistent fade, and I would say that it has a little bit more glide than say my 2021 Sexton Firebird. I'll overlay some shots right now with me throwing this disc forehand and backhand. And after those, I'll directly compare this disc and I'll talk a little bit more about it against like a 2021 Sexton Firebird, Discraft Captain's Raptor, and a Thunderbird. So, yeah. Let's start off comparing the new FD3 to a 2021 Nate Sexton Tour Series Color Glow Firebird, Champion Color Glow Firebird. Now, for starters, I throw about max distance, probably 370, 380 forehand, and about 400 backhand. This disc, just strictly off of feel, I will say it's one of the very few discs that I might say feels a tiny bit better than the new C-Line from Discmania. The only reason I say that is it's not as slick. Just a little bit. Like, it's just a tiny bit less slick. And again, any of these premium plastics are going to have some slickness to it. But this one, I guess just because of the blend or whatever, it's just not as slick. But for me, they don't really feel that different in the hand. The main thing is the flight. And the flight, for me, is what makes this disc better. Not that this disc is bad, but traditionally I thought a Firebird was going to be super overstable, like a Discraft Captain's Raptor. In my opinion, that's what I thought this disc was going to be originally, and it's just not. Not that it's a bad thing. It's very straight. I can get this thing about 320, 330. Now, I've never tried to fully flex this out and get max distance. But for me, it's just something that I throw hard and straight and then get a fade at the end, or maybe give it a little bit of ante and let it work out. For me personally, this disc just goes about 50-ish feet further. Maybe not 50, but it's going consistently at least 20 or 30 feet further with the exact same line. Dead straight, no turn, good fade at the end. I would say that maybe this one pushes a little bit more forward with the fade as opposed to dumping. And in my opinion, if I'm going to want a disc that's that overstable, I'm going to the Captain's Raptor. This fits in very nicely after, if I want something a little bit more overstable than an Onyx or a Dynasty, which I'll compare this to the Onyx maybe. But yeah, just both really good discs. In my opinion, this one just does the job a little bit better. Next review will be the FD3 2A Discraft Paul Ulibarri Captain's Raptor. Now, before I go on with this disc, I would like to say that I do think that an Innova baseline champion plastic Firebird might be as overstable as this. I just think that those Nate Saxon runs came out to be a little bit straighter. So I think if you're like a big Innova person and you want something like this, you might want to look for like a real flat top baseline champion plastic Firebird, or maybe something to that, maybe an Invictus or something. But I just think that the 2021 Nate Saxon Firebirds came out very straight. So, saying that, which is really what led me to getting this disc, in my opinion, this disc just does not compare to this disc. They just don't do the same thing. This is something that I probably won't even get to 300 feet. It's just that overstable. This is what I thought the Firebird was going to be when I first got a Firebird. Again, basically the same feel. Nice and flat. Shallow rim. It's just more overstable. This thing is great. I have a zone as my main approach disc, but if I need something that's going to maybe get a little bit more to the right off of a skip, or it's going to flex a little bit harder, I cannot say enough good things about this disc. And anyone at any skill level can bag something this overstable, because you can use it for 200-foot approaches, 250-foot tee shots, but it's just not gonna. It just doesn't have a lot of glide. In my opinion, 3 glide, 2 glides right. I would say that this thing probably has 5. It's just that simple. This thing is going to go a lot straighter and a lot further, and it's going to do its job. And this, the Captain's Raptor, is just not going to go that straight. I mean, basically, the minute you throw it out of your hand, it's hard dumping to the right. And I think, if you really want to see more on this disc, Paul Ulibarri's got a couple reviews out there, and he would do it more justice than me, but just can't say enough good about this disc or this disc. They're both different, and they both do their jobs very well. The last disc I'll be comparing the FD3 to will be a Discraft Onyx. Now, for starters, I will say that this disc, and I'll do a video on this, is everything that I thought an Innova Thunderbird would be. This isn't an Onyx video. Obviously, it's the FD3 video, and I know we're comparing, so I don't want to say too much good about this disc. But it's just everything that I thought an Innova Thunderbird would be. It's got a tiny bit of flip up, and when it glides, when it starts to fade, notice I said fade, it doesn't dump, and my Thunderbirds dumped, which is great for different shots and stuff, but for the most part, this disc is very straight, like my FD3, and it just is a forward pushing fade. It does not dump. Now, this is where it's going to get a little tricky, and hopefully I do a good job explaining this. Like I said, I throw about 350 to 370 forehand and about 400 backhand. Because of that, I do notice a little difference between these two discs, which is why I bag both. And because they both look very pretty. But if I was somebody who barely could throw over 300 feet, I'd get the Onyx all day. It's not going to be really any less squirrely on you in the wind, and probably give you a little bit more glide. And that's for smaller arm players. Now, not saying I have a big arm. I'd say I probably have about an average arm for an intermediate disc golfer. Because of that, I do get a little bit of a flight. This one's got a little bit of a flip up and go. Get a little bit more distance out of this, where this one is just going to be a little bit more controllable, if that makes sense. It's just not going to really glide as far. But if you were somebody that threw probably like 450, 500, you would definitely see a difference between these two discs. So, they both do their jobs extremely well, and I think that's something that I've said, and that's really what you want in disc. The main thing is your arm speed. Now, you can have a bad arm speed, good arm speed, and just like collecting discs, like I do. I just like collecting discs, especially these real pretty discs. So if I had a slow arm speed, they basically would fly the same. Anything over a slow arm speed, you're going to start noticing different flights. This one isn't going to go as far and have a little bit more of a bite, where this one's going to give you a little bit of a flip up and go. Now, real quick, Onyxes can have different runs, so this was a flat run. Feel-wise, it feels the same. It's nice and shallow. I think you can get some Onyxes with a little bit more dome, and because of that, it can vary in stability. But last thing is the plastic. I mean, this plastic, the ESP Star, whatever, non-premium, non-see-through premium plastic this is a little bit grippier than this, but for me, I don't really notice that big of a difference in grip. Hopefully I did a good job explaining the difference between these two. Unfortunately, they are kind of similar at points, and hopefully, again, I explained that well. I will make a video in future comparing this to a Thunderbird, because, again, I'm repeating myself, but this, in my opinion, is just a better Thunderbird. Hopefully, I'll do some other videos like an in the bag, or maybe some rounds, local rounds, or I might travel maybe one day and do some rounds. So look out for some more content from me, and like, subscribe, and hope you have a good time selecting this.